In this video, we're going to talk about three things. They're all related to Hans Mattson's Civil War career. The first is going to be Fort Snelling. The second is going to be his experience in Tennessee. And the third will be what happened at Vicksburg and for the remainder of the war. So the Civil War starts in 1861. After the first Battle of Bull Run, which was early in the early summer of 1861, it was clear that the Civil War was not going to be a short war, and so President Lincoln was calling on thousands and thousands of volunteers to come from the northern states. Hans Mattson marched to Fort Snelling with 100 Swedes and Norwegians that lived in the Red Wing area, and they were going to join the army at Fort Snelling. Their regiment is going to be the 3rd Minnesota Regiment, and surprisingly, again, Mattson, at age 29, is starting to show that he has some ability and leadership because the men of his unit elect him to be one of the captains. After being trained for several weeks at Fort Snelling, the 3rd Regiment is going to be packed off and sent to Tennessee to fight the Confederates. Mattson, however, is going to fall very ill when they are in Columbia, Tennessee. And his best friend, in fact, talks a Confederate family into taking this Union soldier into their house and nursing him back to health. While Mattson was recovering with this Confederate family, the rest of his regiment marched off to fight at Murfreesboro, where disaster struck the 3rd Regiment. They were cut off by Confederate troops, and their officers surrendered almost the entire regiment. That meant they were taken into custody, and they were held as prisoners of war until they could be exchanged with Confederate prisoners that the Union had captured. These captured men, when they were paroled, they went back to Minnesota, and they would fight in the U.S.-Dakota conflict. All right, so he recovers his health, and because most of the men are gone and fresh recruits are going to come in, he's going to be promoted pretty quickly, and he's going to rise to the rank of colonel. Now we're going to do the last thing, which is his military service at Vicksburg. All right, Vicksburg is in Mississippi, and it sits on the Mississippi River, and it was the last Confederate stronghold. That's where Hans Mattson and the 3rd Regiment is going to be sent next, and they are going to be under the command of Union General Ulysses S. Grant. Vicksburg was a fortress, sits on some high bluffs above the river, and somehow General Grant managed to surround this city, and for 5 weeks in the summer he would bombard the city of Vicksburg, and eventually Vicksburg is going to surrender to Grant. It's one of the great victories for the Union in the Civil War. One of the things that Hans Mattson said was that after the Battle of Vicksburg was over, many of the Union soldiers had trouble sleeping because of the silence. The guns had fallen silent when Vicksburg surrendered, and Hans had a little trouble sleeping after that. So he's going to serve to the end of the Civil War, and in 1865 he's going to muster out of the Union Army, and he's going to head back to Minnesota.